Welcome everybody. I am your host, Carlos Kidman, and this is Dan Peterson, QA Manager at ForcePoint. And today we're going to talk about QA, the human point.
That's right.
So I just barely got back from a conference, and a major portion of that was focused on CI/CD. For those who don't know what that is, that's continuous integration, continuous development, continuous testing, continuous
delivery
for everything, right? And so lots of automation, lots of machine learning, lots of programming, lots of code, and are we going to eventually follow the AI overlords and all that stuff? It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And so I like that today we're going to talk about the human perspective.
That's right.
After hearing all that automation, all the coding, what do you feel humans, we as QA engineers, what can we bring to the table in this new agile, automated world that we're moving towards? So
I'm glad that the conferences and all the QA world were focused on automation. Why? We need it, and talking about the human point in general, basically automation, machine learning, all that autonomous stuff, to me, it tests code. We need that. Great. Test the code. Why? Humans can focus on what they're good at, having interaction with the product.
Yeah.
Bringing a better product to the table, not just because the code works, but because that's what the customer wants. This is what the customer is expecting. This is the experience the customer is having with our product. That's where QA comes in. Having all of that autonomous machine learning, great stuff. I love it. But it doesn't, as good as machine learning is, it doesn't give you the perspective of what the customer is experiencing with your product. And that's where great QA can focus on that to spend more time doing stuff that humans are good at.
Yeah, I like the word experience, because I think that's essentially where the human perspective comes in, is as a user, what is my experience on Facebook? What is my experience on Twitter?
Right.
And how can you automate that experience? How can you automate the feels?
Exactly.
You watch a cat video and you're like, but how can a machine be like 001? Like how can it feel
exactly
or experience what's happening there? And so I think it's almost like human QA, human testing, let's say, is really validating the experience our end user is going to have.
Exactly.
And putting ourselves as advocates of the end user.
Exactly. As much as we are automators and like drawing up beautiful automation, this continuous delivery, this whole world that we get caught up into, that's why I think when we need to kind of step back and rethink what is quality assurance actually assuring. Are we assuring that the code works, or are we assuring that we're delivering the product that the customer wants?
Yeah, and so to kind of shift gears a little bit, because I believe that a lot of people understand the importance of human testing. I think a lot of people have that same mentality of, yes, we got to do automation, and yes, we got to do human testing. But I think the biggest question that I got from people as I've been networking, connecting, and talking to people in our industry is, how does that actually fit into the SDLC though? Like where do you do human testing? Because it does take more time. And how can you prove the value of that? So first question, because that was a pretty big one.
That's a pretty big one, yeah.
First question, I'd say, where do you start in the human quality assurance?
I would just say that I think it's a mentality. It's a paradigm shift, right? So we come in and we talk to our product managers, our program managers, and everybody, and if we get involved as early as possible and say, guys, we got to kind of rethink this. Yes, I need to make sure that the code is good. That's my job. But I also need to make sure that where the code meets the human user, the input, the end user experience, right there in the middle, that's where we are. We're not just ensuring that the code works, because that is code. Great, code works. Good job, guys. Good job, you.
Yeah.
But if it's something that just is like, this is ridiculous, even though it works the way we designed it, but the design is bad or the experience is bad for the user. That's where quality assurance can really give that and make it worth the money that we're charging. And again, I think goes back to the fact of, I read somewhere in the latest World Quality Report that like, hey, 65% of people who run into one bug, one problem, one little quip in an app, they stop using that app. On to the next one.
Yeah, and I think that's so true, by the way, because we're so used to now apps being so fast, quick updates, like you never, I call it the Google effect, where you never go to google.com and expect it to be down.
Yeah.
Right. Not saying that Google doesn't have any problems at all,
right,
but you go there because you're like, oh, I got to search something. Let me go to google.com and search something. You don't go there saying, I hope they're up this time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so, yes, they use a lot of autonomy to do that, but it's kind of that if Google kept hiccuping English, yeah. If they kept doing that, then eventually people would be like, maybe Bing is all right. You know what I mean?
Let's not go that far.
But you know what I mean? Like, it would make them look somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Google wouldn't be Google without that quality.
And again, it's not only just is it there? Does it work? Does it have better results than Bing? Does it give me more of what I'm looking for than Bing, than Yahoo, than these other search? Because the experience of that usage needs to be there to say, oh yeah, this is really nice. I like that I just typed this one thing in and you gave me suggestions for other searches. You brought me up these little widgets. You gave me suggestions of, oh, you're actually shopping for something. It almost knows what you're thinking before you even typed it. Mm-hmm. And that's the human experience of when you're testing that code, the different code paths. It's like, oh, this experience is really nice. It really works.
Right. And I mean, when you Google something, and I know this was a report that came years and years ago when Google was, starting out and whatnot, mm-hmm. where people realized that if you're not on the first page of Google, like, it's after a search, you almost never go to page 2 or page 3.
Where do you hide the dead bodies?
Right.
Page 2.
You almost never go to page 2 or page 3 or any other page after that. If it's on the first page, cool. If it's not, I'll search it a little bit differently. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so there's no machine that said if there's more than one page, the user's going to do this. That was a human. Mm-hmm. We were able to determine that because of human behavior, not because of machine behavior.
Yeah, and we need to understand the customer's expectation of the product, continuing to think of how they are going to be interacting with our features. Not just how we coded it up to be. A lot of times my guys will run into something and they're really good at it where you're cross, testing. We tested this one feature, but how does it work with the whole product? Mm-hmm. That could be integration testing as well, but it's much harder to do autonomous integration testing with all your different other, maybe even different products that interface with your product and the flow of that. We call it the pipeline. You need to go from the beginning of the pipeline all the way to the end of the pipeline, mm-hmm. through all these different options that we created, because our product's like, okay, we say we're going to work with this. Okay, we can say we're going to work with that too. Okay, we're going to integrate with this. But we made this one feature that doesn't really play well with those other things. Those are kind of hard things to ensure that flow works the same way that we would think a customer would use it the same way.
Yeah, and on top of that as well, it's our users that are the ones pushing for the new features.
Oh, absolutely.
Pushing for the new experiences,
mm-hmm.
saying, it would be nice if your code did this, essentially is what they're saying, right?
Absolutely.
I would rather have, instead of this modal that pops up every time, why not just have it be in line, because I hate modals hitting me in the face. The code isn't telling us that. Our users are telling us that.
Yeah.
And so us as QA, the advocates of the end user, and being as close to the end user we possibly can to get that feel, to get that experience. We're trying to keep up with our users, and our machines can't do that. We need our humans, our QA engineers to do that.
Exactly. I have written down, like, the human point gives us kind of like 3 things that, and obviously more, but I highlighted 3 things. It gives us visibility, and it gives us better better interaction with our customers. And then it gives us the ability to use automation for what's it intended for, is to save time, to actually use that human power wisely.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I hope that people are understanding that we're not, like, obviously, those who know me, I'm an automator myself, right? Yeah. So I love programming, I love automating, and it's easy to prove the value of automation.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's easy to put metrics on it. We're just saying that there's also another half to it, the human point, the human perspective.
Yeah, and absolutely. You would think the human point is trying to diss on machine learning and AI. I would argue absolutely not. No. You need that. Again, that World Quality Report, the things that they call out that improves quality the most is automation. You need that quick smoke test to make sure once you integrated a different feature, nothing else broke. You need that quick automation so all your guys aren't wasting their time on testing, did this code work correctly? No, they're working on the real problems that the customer is going to run into. Other than just code, all these interactions and all the ways their experience is being touched, use the human power more wisely. So the time you spend on automation is given to you back in being able to use the human interaction.
I love that, by the way, where you said, like, use the human time more wisely.
Yeah.
Because right now, I think that's one of the biggest...
It's a time suck.
I think that's the biggest challenges companies are facing, and why they just say, oh, we got to automate it. Because that seems like the easiest solution. Oh, just program it, right? But they don't understand, like...
Oh, it's spending.
Right. Well, you got to have the other side as well, but they don't know how to use that side as effectively. Yeah. And that's why I always say it starts with the people. I say that so often because you have to use the people right. You know, your people are the ones creating the code. Right?
Yeah.
Your people are the ones creating the processes, talking to your end user, driving the business. You know, like, you got to have that human point, that human perspective to be able to actually do the coding right.
Yeah.
So I think that leads into my next question of, you said, use human time wisely. How would you do that?
All right, so we got a couple different ideas in order to best use human time wisely. First, like I said, is the visibility, seeing and being seen, QA, being and being seen. So there's some, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, behavior-driven development. Mm-hmm. So the behavior-driven development for all you guys is kind of a different take on the development process, where you start up front with use cases and QA is there, and you guys walk through a scenario of a feature. Say, okay, if a customer returns a product, it needs to give the customer their money back. It needs to put the product back into stock. It needs to put, A, B, C. It needs to do these three things. And that user story then becomes the actual code. If you say it does this, this, and this, it calls out and does that. When you run that automation, so right from the beginning, QA is involved in not only the product development, but they're involved in injecting the automation right from the beginning. So they can turn that use case into actual actionable automation code. So
yeah, I think you need the QA engineers, the humans, to almost create the base, the framework of what the testing strategy is going to be. And at that point, it's easy to say, these over here need to be automated. These need to be human tested, kind of a thing.
Well, in behavior-driven development, you write it out in plain English, and it just basically translates that into code. But you run that user story that translates into code, and it's pretty slick to get that automation right up front. And it's something that we've been trying as well, as to when you sit down in the feature team reviews. Another one, it's called the Three Amigo meeting.
I like it.
You have QA, you have development, and you have product right in that same discussion. So you get that Three Amigos meeting. You get that visibility of QA being like, wait a minute, what about this feature that we developed the previous release? How's that going to interact with this? You start having those conversations. Whereas usually, product makes up an idea, dev says, okay, I can code it this way, and chucks it over the wall to QA. QA has had zero interaction. You guys are over there.
Right.
You QA guys.
Poke with a broomstick. Get out of here, QA.
Stay over there, QA. Don't talk to us yet. We haven't coded it. You have nothing to test. That's not this is how we can inject the human point a little more, and get in there earlier. Have that visibility to be like, guys, how are we going to test this? We need maybe a dev tool. We need to go to DevOps and say, guys, we're going to need to spin up a whole nother VM instance for this testing effort, and we're going to have to run it every release. All this maintenance tail, all these kind of problems can be thought out right from the get-go.
Yeah, one of the things I always say is what's the difference between a good QA engineer and a great QA engineer is what are you doing when you're not actively testing something? Right. And it's all of that communication, that transparency, that collaboration with everybody else on your team.
Yeah.
So that way at the beginning you're setting up everything for when the testing actually happens. It's now easy to just do the testing. It's no longer you get to that point and you're like, all right, what am I testing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like one of the quick ways to kind of determine if you're being successful or not in those test planning phases, right, is by the time it gets to the testing phase, how many questions are you asking?
Right.
At that point.
Right. All those questions like, oh wait, does it integrate with this? How long should I be testing this for? Should it actually work with this other feature? Do I even need to worry about that? This other product that we released, does it have anything to do with this? All those questions.
All of that stuff should be answered at the beginning.
Yeah.
So if it gets to the testing phase and now you're asking those questions, that's when QA looks like it's the bottleneck. But we have to ask the questions to test it appropriately.
And that's why get in there earlier, Stop having the whole, make QA the human point. Like, get in there earlier, start talking to people, start being visible, start thinking about how your customer is going to interact it right from the get-go, and say, guys, don't just code it and chuck it over the wall, and then as I smoke test it, say, hey, okay, chuck it out to customers. That's not the world we're going to live in anymore.
Yeah, very waterfall. There's one guy who called it water scrum and fall.
Well,
it's super funny.
Well, especially when you're, if your development is 2 weeks, and they code for a week and a half, give you 3 days to test it, and they're going to ship it no matter what. We need this feature out there no matter what. And if you give enough smoke tests, pass, nothing actually blew up, but the experience is awful, with this new feature, your customers are going to hate you. So
yeah,
that brings me to my other point of how to get more human point in your testing is beta testing. Get your customers involved. I know at my company, we invite our customers in to our office, let them sit with us for a week. We got some big customers, and they have a lot to say. So we let them sit with us for a week. They give us their feedback, say, here's what we like, here's what we don't like, here's what you can put in there next, and then we tell them what our roadmap is. Here's what our ideas are. Do you guys like this direction? Do you not like this direction? Get them involved.
I love that because it adds that trust from the user, right? Because the user now feels like, I'm being heard.
Absolutely.
And they are truly building this for me.
Yeah.
Right? And that just builds that loyalty, rather than I know a lot of companies will just build stuff out, and even some companies will use their customers in production as their testers and say, "Oh, it broke. Sorry, we'll get it fixed next time." And they're like, "All right, well, that's frustrating."
A lot of companies do that.
Right.
I feel like it. And we're in that world where it's just like, and even Google has it. Like where they're like, "Hey guys, if you find a bug, we'll pay you for it. Great, thank you for that." Like, okay.
That makes it not as bad at least.
Yeah.
Dang it! I can't do this. That sucks. At least I get $5.
Yeah. And actually, the crowdsourcing QA is actually a good idea. Hopefully you do that just before you ship it out to your mass public.
Yeah, I think if you can support it and if you communicate it in a way, then yes, I do agree that it can work, and I think that's why Google's been so successful with it. But the majority of companies, I would say, wouldn't be able to do a model like that.
No.
And they try to, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
They're doing it incorrectly. But I love that you say it's not that we can't use our users.
Yeah.
Right? We should include them.
Absolutely.
But do it wisely, right? Do it in a good way that includes them and makes them feel effective. And I am making changes. Like my opinion affects the way this company is doing things.
I mean, and you got to think of it this way. It's like, that's free testing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's free testing. We call it beta testing for a reason. You know, it's okay, free. You know, but you know, it's really great feedback from the people who care the most. You know, sometimes and a lot of times, QA testers, we come into a product and we test a product. Do we go home and use it? Probably not. You know, let's talk to the guys who are using it, see what they have to say. This is testing.
So yeah, and again, love it. I think that a lot of more companies should really use that beta testing, should really use those environments to really include their users. And I love that you guys bring people into your office. You know, sometimes we kind of do the over the wall thing too, where we say, here's a beta testing, just download TestFlight, and you know what I mean, like, instead of truly bringing them in and say, come to the office, lunch is on us, and we'll have a testing party. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And get creative with it.
Exactly.
You know? So next question that I have is, now that we've talked about these things, again, super valuable. I 100% agree on everything we've been talking about. The next one is, how do you prove the value when maybe upper management or the other teams are like, yeah, but human testing, we don't see the value. How can you show that value? How can you talk about it?
Yeah, I think it is, again, even when you talk to your customers and you get feedback from your customers, requesting feedback from your customers, I think that your human interaction, it pays off dividends with your customers. And again, it's hard to prove that to upper management per se, but I think that they will start to see it with their customers before long. And by proving it to them, you tell them the story, this human point story. And if they keep nodding their head like you are doing, and they say, you know what, actually, you're right. Again, I point back to that World Quality Report. A lot of companies are spending 25% on budget on the quality. Why? Why are they spending a quarter of their budget for the product on quality? Because it matters. You know, people, again, they don't want stuff that doesn't work. We're talking about mission critical items here, and for some of them it is life or death sometimes. You know, this has to work. If it doesn't work, there's no other option. This has to work. You have to have quality into your product. We rely on it every day. We rely on all of our software to work. Could you imagine if you just came in and Google wasn't working? Like,
well, I can't do my job anymore.
Yeah, exactly. The whole world would shut down. What would happen? You know, like, oh no, we lost all of our brains. You know, we rely so much on our software to do what we need it to do every day. We have given over the reins to the overlords of code, you know, like right. We rely on this and it has to work. And so I don't think we need to necessarily prove that human point is getting your ROI necessarily, but they need to hear the story that, hey, you know, if your product is not satisfying your customers' needs, someone else is going to make a product that does. And they will go to that like that. No problem. That's the world we live in today. You make a good product, there's going to be someone right there behind you trying to get that exact same customer.
Right. I think there's a difference between an experience and a quality experience. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Just like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Google, Bing. You know what I mean?
There you go. Bing is an experience. I'll give them that. Yeah. You know, but is it like the experience that I want as a user?
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. So that's a good point right there.
Yeah. Well, was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrap up?
No. I think we covered it all. Again, don't think that we're against automation or the evil automators. No, it's not even that at all. I welcome my automated overlords. No, it isn't meant to replace the humans. It's meant to augment them. It's meant to
boom.
It's meant to focus on things that need that raw human interaction, that raw human intellect. It gives us free time to go have those 3 Amigo meetings, to have the discussions and ask the questions that need to be asked. It gives us more time to focus on regression testing.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, we'll get to it. No, oh, here's another release. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, push that back. Can't focus on that right now. Can't worry about those things. I got another release to do. That gives us more, it frees us up to make a even more quality product. So, and it has to happen. There's a lot of things there I think that need to happen. Our environments are crazier than ever.
Yeah,
we support every product, or meaning platform. We've got to support it on every device that anybody brings. It's just got to work on this device, and all of our code has to be split ever so slightly in order to work on this environment versus that environment versus this environment. And our code paths are 30 different code paths now that was just one, just because of a little tweak that this one device needs to work, that our customers have to have.
Yeah, get off KitKat already, Android users. 4.4, let it die. Let it go away.
Yeah, exactly. Stop supporting old, but we have to.
Right.
Because somewhere out there, we're making money off that person, and
Yep.
we gotta make it work for that.
We care about you too, KitKat. I'm just kidding.
Thus, the automation is needed.
Yeah, so before we go, what advice do you have for QA engineers or even people up and coming that want to get into QA that may not have the automation experience, that want to be part of this human point movement? What advice do you have for them?
You need to learn some automation.
Yeah. Don't everything we said, just scratch. No,
no, it's the world we live in. You got to be able to automate stuff. You got to be able to work with code. There's no doubt in my mind, but you got to be able to prove your point of we got one guy, he is just amazing at being observative. Like he can just find stuff that everybody else will just look over, and he's the guy that I love the most. He might not be the most technically minded guy, but he finds a lot of bugs just because he's observant of just watching what's happening within the product. He's being observant. He's being the human point. Yeah. Where everybody else is like check box, and he's just searching for things that just don't work for him or things that pop up. So try this, ad hoc, play around.
The exploratory.
Exactly. You need to learn, for people that are up and coming in the QA world, you need to learn the different types of testing. You need to learn the different ways how to test. You don't need to learn necessarily code to learn those kind of things. You just need to learn, okay, what's the difference between white box, black box, regression, all those different types of testing to help you understand of, all right, I could try it this way this time. I can try it this way this time. I can interact with the code this way. I'm the human point.
Yeah, I would say, really have the confidence to speak up when you feel that something is wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because too many times I see where a meeting happens. They may even be the Three Amigo meeting, right?
Yep.
The meeting happens and the QA engineer is just quiet. Yep. Just, we'll let
as soon as you get the code, I'll test it.
Right. And then after the meeting, they talk to me, hey, Carl, so this is what they said, and I just think this is going to be a problem right here. And the first thing I could say is, well, why didn't you ask me that?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why didn't you ask?
That...
If you don't know the answer, it's okay.
Yeah.
Ask and find the answer, because that's going to force a conversation to happen, and then it will be a Three Amigos conversation, not a Two Amigos and you. You know what I mean? So have that confidence to ask those questions and ask the questions.
Yeah. Come with a list of questions. You should have already, even if they just had a thought of an idea, you should already know your product well enough to think about, okay, here's what the things it currently touches in that area. Will it affect A through Z? Come with the questions.
And it doesn't make you look bad. I think a lot of people are worried that, I'm going to look dumb if I ask this question. It adds to your credibility, because you're thinking about all these different points, and everyone else is going to be like, man, Carlos was asking these questions that I didn't really think about. What happens if I'm doing, how far back are we actually supporting? Right. We say, 3 versions, but...
Yeah, are we supporting that KitKat still with this new feature?
Right. But even little things like that is just, hey, by the way, this is what I'm going to be testing. Do you guys like that?
Yeah.
That right there, that question adds transparency, creates a conversation.
Learn the test plan,
Right.
learn the test cycle, learn all those things that you can inject into those different items for sure. Agreed.
So I'm just going to keep saying ask question thing. I say it so many times. Ask the questions, find the answers.
Yeah,
it
you'll
starts the
ask
conversation.
dumb questions. It happens.
I do it all the time.
We're QA. They're going to look at us like we're dumb.
Until we're
"Duh."
genius.
Until it doesn't work.
Yeah, and then it's still our fault. Not just
Well, they'll blame us for sure.
Well, anyway, thanks guys for joining us. Again, I'm Carlos Kidman, and with our guest Dan Peterson. And have a good day testing. Stay hungry, my friends.